something that tends to be brought up when it comes to who the next Straw Hat will be are the patterns that help to show and point towards who the most likely person is. But any kind of pattern tends to have a few holes in it to some degree. Whether it be the sad backstory, because let's be honest, before Sanji's Germa backstory, his backstory with Zeph was more harrowing and somewhat sad, but not really tragic, until we found out he lost his mother. And with Luffy, before the death of Ace, technically Luffy hadn't really lost anyone. There's also the pattern people will throw out of a character having a major fight against an opponent, which also isn't always the case. Sanji never defeated anyone in the Baratie. He didn't defeat Pearl, Gin did. And he didn't defeat Gin. Gin essentially sacrificed himself for Sanji. Brook never took down Ryuma, and if you're counting the spider monkey, I don't know about that one. And when it comes to Nami and Robin before they join, forget about it. But one of the things I think is the most crucial for any potential Straw Hat is to gain some sort of familiarity with at least a good portion of the crew. And that's why friendship matters. Or at the very least, the start of a friendship. Take Luffy's first meeting with Zoro, as it serves as the template for most meetings with potential crewmates as a whole, which is why so many false potential crewmates always kind of come up to some degree. There's always that initial meeting. Originally, it would be between Luffy and one person, as with when he first met Nami, but Luffy would always spend some time talking and discussing with a potential crewmate. Now, this, again, has holes in it, as he had that moment with Kobe as well, but the difference tends to be the person kind of aiding Luffy in some major way, whether it be Luffy and the crew, or just Luffy himself. But I always find there's these moments of kind of a downtime. After characters are initially introduced to a conflict, they'll happen upon a character as, you know, the crew is getting their bearings in a new area, such as with Usopp. After the crew initially met up with him, he basically treated them to an all-out meal. And he somewhat got to kind of know them, but more importantly, they got to know him. The same for Sanji. The character started to develop a repertoire with the potential Straw Hat before the conflict really got into full swing. Even when it came to Vivi, most people tend to forget that Vivi and Mr. Nine spent some time, not a long time, but a little bit of time, kind of just hanging out with the crew when they were luring them to Whiskey Peak. But the whole crew got to be familiar with Vivi. Same with the introduction of Nico Robin. Though she was introduced as an enemy, the majority of the crew became aware of her and how, I guess, duplicitous she could come off as. But you also had instances with Chopper, where he had ended up meeting Sanji and Luffy to a very less than pleasant extent, with the gag of them trying to constantly eat him, but also Chopper's care for Nami, which even led to her asking Chopper to join the crew. And these moments of antagonism are at an all-time high when Luffy first met Frankie, with Oda taking a more sporadic and slow introduction of Frankie meeting more and more of the crew. His initial fight with Luffy, the time he spent with Usopp getting to know him, meeting Sanji, who was mad about the fact that Frankie had basically caused a lot of the major issues with the Straw Hat on Water 7, and then once the battle with CP9 was about to get underway, Frankie had essentially been introduced to the entirety of the crew. And then you have Brook, who was out and out just introduced to everyone right on the spot. Only for us to get another unique case with the introduction to Jinbei to Luffy. But this was important for Jinbei to mostly get to know Luffy specifically because of the relationship Jinbei had with Ace. But once it came to Fishman Island, where by the end of it, Jinbei was asked to join the crew, Jinbei got to be acquainted with Nami, which the relationship between Nami and Jinbei is very important. Jinbei got to know Sanji. He got to know Robin. He got to know Chopper. All before the initial battle with the new Fishman pirates. There's always this theme of the Straw Hats coming together and having a moment to just hash things out with a potential new crewmate. And that's exactly why Carrot's time with the Straw Hats feels so meaningful. And so many people have said that, oh, Carrot doesn't have the same kind of bond with Luffy and the rest of the crew that point to her becoming a Straw Hat, and I say bull to that. Carrot was fascinated with the crew from the jump the moment she found out about the tea party. The idea of an adventure. Was this naive? Yes. But that's the point. Carrot has been naive. She's had to learn the hard way the struggles of being at sea. She boards the Sunny initially just thinking, oh, this is just going to be a fun little excursion. And it helps that the people that she's on the crew with were all those who had initially come to Zou and had actually spent time in Zou and knew of Carrot. With Luffy probably being the only one who was the least familiar with Carrot. But the moments Carrot spent with the Straw Hats on this excursion was absolutely pivotal in showing that she is the next Straw Hat crewmate. Her adventures with Chopper in the Mirror World were pivotal in gaining Brûlé, who was the major linchpin in so many events that helped the Straw Hats make their way through that whole excursion. The devastating loss of Pedro, which wasn't just made a sore spot for Carrot, but it ended up being a sore spot for Brook as well, as he had spent a good amount of time with Pedro, and Brook had experienced a lot of loss in his backstory. Oda taking the time to highlight a character's death and the loss of that character like this, the loss of Carrot's mentor, that feels like it's significant. That bond of grief that Carrot gets to have with the members of the crew gives a kind of connection very much akin to Ace's loss when it came to Luffy. Yes, the crew didn't know Ace that long when they met him in Alabasta, but they still knew the impact and sadness of that loss. And Jinbei's speech about making Pedro's sacrifice actually mean something, that was significant, because that helped to give Jinbei a good moment with the chunk of the crew which he hadn't really gotten to have too much of before, but also helped to give Jinbei a moment with Carrot that was significant too. Jinbei's presence helped to be a great grounding force for Carrot to do what Pedro told her to do. Keep moving forward. That's what helped her to be this helpful entity in trying to flee from Big Mom. Her transformation into Sulong was a big help to the Straw Hats, a big help to Luffy's friends. That's her significant moment. Much like with Brook on Thriller Bark with the salt. He wasn't able to defeat a major opponent, but he was able to come through and be a major help to the crew in general. Or even Frankie, when he just protected Robin in Enies Lobby and building the Sunny. The ways in which a character helps the Straw Hats doesn't have to only just pertain to Luffy. It's the entirety of the crew, because they are the Nakama, the friends, the comrades of Luffy, his treasure, what's important to him. You also have to understand, even now within the book, these four, Brook, Jinbei, Chopper, Nami, are the only Straw Hats who have actually seen Sulong, and they've only seen it with Carrot. And with what Carrot did in acting as a major distracting force for Big Mom's fleet, that just helps to build more on the relationship with Carrot's time with the Straw Hats. Brook coming in and helping to save Carrot when she was feeling weak. Nami growing more and more of a sisterly bond with Carrot. Not to mention Chopper's big brother bond with Carrot. And then the tragic and heartfelt but sad moment between Carrot and Sanji, where she tries her damnedest to make sure he doesn't feel bad about the fact that Pedro died in this excursion to help him. A moment like this being given to a side character who won't matter past Zoe, past Wano, past Whole Cake, who's just gonna go back home after this little adventure, that feels wrong. That feels wasteful. Why have Pedro's sacrifice be this thing that weighed heavy on the hearts of the Straw Hats when, let's be honest, they didn't know that Pell survived that explosion in Alabasta? Pagaya spent time with the Straw Hats. His death could have been something significant that weighed heavy on Coinus during the events of Skypiea. Pound's sacrifice could have been something that mattered. Even Peckham's sacrifice could have been something that mattered. But no, it was Pedro's sacrifice. Pedro's death, Pedro's loss, was the one time the Straw Hats lost an ally in a story arc, and they had no choice but to mourn that character. That is significant. Carrot being there to reunite with Jinbei is significant during the events of Wano, because she spent time with him in Whole Cake. She got to know him. She got to trust him. They fought side by side. She was left not knowing whether or not he would die, having stayed behind on Whole Cake. The fact that even the animators seem to want to just incorporate her in group shots with the crew after the arrival of Jinbei feels significant, making it feel like she's just another part of the gang because she spent time with a good chunk of the Straw Hat crew. Because by this point, as the Straw Hats had made their way to Onigashima, Carrot had spent about the same amount of time with the same Straw Hats Jinbei had. On Fishman Island, who mostly talked to Jinbei? Nami, Sanji, and Luffy. But you also had Robin during Whole Cake, who was there to see Jinbei. Brook, Nami, Chopper, Sanji, and Luffy. The group that Carrot was also with. Like, at most, if Carrot had just spent more time with Robin, it would be directly 1-to-1. But even Jinbei's interactions with Robin in Fishman Island wasn't as significant as once we got to Onigashima. And that's why Carrot, despite the fact that she wasn't able to deal with Perospero, that leaves things open for Carrot. Open to do other things, to pursue other things. Perospero beat Carrot down and showed her that there's nothing but harshness on the sea. And for Carrot to just give up and go home and not want to go on an adventure anymore flies so hard in the face of everything One Piece. It flies in the face of Luffy himself. Pedro emphasized the importance of the Straw Hats. And Carrot wanted to go on a grand adventure. There's no way her journey ends here, that it stops dead in its tracks at Wano. And that's why Yamato's relationship with Momonosuke just feels so prominent. Even the animators have noted that Yamato's relationship with Momonosuke feels very significant. During the entirety of the Straw Hats' time on Onigashima, Yamato has only ever ran into Luffy and Frankie. That's it. And the only reason Yamato ran into Frankie is because Frankie ended up having a matchup with Sasaki. Personally, I wouldn't mind Yamato being on the crew. And if what Oda was trying to get across was that Yamato was going to be the next Straw Hat rather than Carrot, that would be fine. But Yamato hasn't spent the same kind of time with the rest of the crew that Carrot has. Hasn't helped the Straw Hats the same way that Carrot has. Hasn't been impressive to the Straw Hats the same way that Carrot has. Frankie got to see Yamato take out one of the numbers, which Frankie could have done on his own because he had already done it previously in the arc. I've heard people say that, oh, Yamato will get to know the Straw Hats at the banquet at the end of the battle and all of that. And it's just like, no. Oda doesn't normally do that. He keeps things at the forefront. Before the battle, the Straw Hats meet a new potential candidate. That's the pattern. That's what he's usually done previously. It is one of the more solid and concrete things that have always happened. There's some kind of camaraderie and knowledge of the potential Straw Hat built first and foremost. And any misgivings are kind of pushed to the side or squashed, or, the Straw Hats have to struggle to get over once that crewmate is at the party or invited aboard. Stuff along those lines. All of that, just bypassing all of that for Yamato would just feel off. And that's why Carrot feels like she will join. She's been helpful, she's been a friend, she's lost, but as Pedro has said on repeat in her mind, she's gotta move forward. And moving forward wouldn't constitute going back home. Yes, her home has essentially come to pick her up, as some people have said, but that's still looking back. So what do you think? Do you think I made a compelling argument for why friendship and camaraderie matters for a potential Straw Hat crewmate? Why it matters for Carrot to join up with the crew? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I want to thank you for watching this video and being a part of the cult of Carrot. We who believe that Carrot is the next Straw Hat crewmate. The evidence is obvious. It's empirical. It's out there. Oda has laid it all at our feet. We only have to just see it and realize it. So I want you to go out there and boost the hashtags. Carrot for Nakama. Carrot for Straw Hat. Preach the gospel. Because you know the truth of what Oda's trying to do. And if you have time, go on Twitter and give a follow to Carrot for Nakama, as this channel was inspired by their wonderful posts and blogs about the depth of the story of One Piece with analytical evidence that goes even deeper in more detail than I could. Join up with a fellow true believer as we cheer on our plucky future lookout. But until the next video, I want to thank you for joining me. Stay safe, stay well, and keep on believing. Till next time.